Hi, everybody. It's me. It's Dr. Kestler from Lorain County Community College. Welcome to today's April 17th co-video. Quick announcement. Next, tomorrow I won't be doing a co-video, and let's see, I won't be doing one on Sunday either. Hopefully see you back on Monday. We here in Ohio are working towards opening up slightly, ever so with the brakes on, in May 1st, which is, I guess, 2 weeks from today. Yes, 2 weeks from today is a brief opening, but I'll get into that in a second. First of all, I better tell you my temperature today. It's a little higher than usual, 97 Fahrenheit or 36.1 Celsius. I also, while I'm on the subject of opening back up and how opening back up is going to be, there is, first of all, shout out to Giorgio, one of my citizen scientists on the who watched this. I made a mistake yesterday. I had a number written wrong. I had the calculation right in my head, but I am dyslexic, and I wrote the results down wrong. It is, we will have, going forward, even when we get the numbers down, 99.7% of the population will not have been exposed of the world. So that it is imperative that until we can absolutely be certain that the virus is gone, that we institute very cautious social distancing, very cautious testing, to see who is infected, and then positively quarantining anybody who is positive for the virus. And so that's where we need to go. I know a lot of people think and thought that this was not anything big and a big deal, and that the response was overblown. I can assure you it was not overblown. Let me just tell you, this is a little bubble diagram showing you taking data from the Centers for Disease Control of deaths, and you can see yellow, and the yellow circle is deaths due to COVID. And as the weeks go on, this is just 1 month. This is 1 month worth of data. As the weeks go on, you can see that COVID-19 deaths climb to second place. The only one that beats it, I've just put the last week here on the next slide, and the only one that beats is heart disease. Heart disease killed more people last week in the United States than COVID-19 did. Now, hopefully, we can see that number return back to a very small number and maybe go away entirely. And again, as we move out, and there are people who are ready to roll, one has to do this very cautiously, or there will be more problems, more issues with it. That is very important. I also want to point out something that I have just learned that just happened today. The Chinese have corrected their data. They from death toll, and their death toll has gone up a bunch. Apparently they weren't counting people correctly. They weren't counting people who died at home. People only died at hospitals. So this is one of the things that happens, and that you get errors in reporting. So now I think the new numbers accurately reflect those cases that have been added in. And while we're on the subject of China, let me just say there's been a lot going on in the media recently about the origins of COVID. And one of the things I can assure you of, the data at this point suggests 100, well, not 100%ly, but the burden of evidence suggests a natural origin for this virus. If you look at the genetic relatedness, it appears to be a naturally occurring bat virus that may have involved one more animal or so, but it does not appear to be anything that is engineered. Engineered virus theories have been going on since back in the day of HIV. When I was in HIV, there have been theories about that. And in that case, I got to tell you, the best way of answering any of these questions is with DNA. You take the DNA. The DNA never lies. DNA is very good on a witness stand. So the DNA suggests that it isn't natural. Whether there was a laboratory involved, I don't know. It could have been something that escaped from a laboratory accidentally. There was an outbreak in Reston, Virginia, in the United States. An Ebola-like virus got released. Must have been in the 80s, I'm thinking. I can't remember exactly, but a while back. And so things happen. That, of course, led to a movie, that's for sure, and that was Outbreak, that was all about that story. The movie was much more dramatic than the accident, though. I'll tell you that from somebody who knows all the details. The movie was much more dramatic than the accident. The accident was a little boring. In fact, the virus that got released was not very much at all. So it does not suggest a genetically manipulated virus. I'm going to put that there, that no one has genetically manipulated this virus. It does appear to be natural. I will tell you this, that the Chinese are very, very interested in being a world science leader. They're very interested in pushing the envelope. They're doing a lot of work. In my lab, we were reading some Chinese papers a few months back, and we were very impressed at some of the things that they were doing, because they're spending a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money on science because they want to be a science leader. They want that prestige. In the next slide, you can see a little picture. I've shown you pictures like this before. This is a genetic relatedness tree, sort of like what you guys do when you get 23andMe. They look for relatives, and then they kind of put them together and say who's closer to who, second cousin, third cousin, fourth cousin, yada, yada, yada. This is what we're doing here. So we're looking at COVID-19's family tree, and you can see it all roots to an animal origin at the beginning. And you can see that there is the Chinese outbreak, and then you can see it goes all over. Yesterday, I shared with you information about, or 2 days ago, I shared with you information about the Iceland study, which basically corroborates this kind of idea. And if it was an accident, or if it was intentional, boy, it was a terrible kind of a mistake, because China ended up really hurting themselves terribly by this. And they're the second biggest economy in the world, and they have lost all of the growth that they've tried to accumulate over the last 50 years. So if it wasn't intentional, it was a pretty poorly done, executed intention. Always, sometimes the easier explanation, the one that makes the most amount of sense, is the right one, and I think that is the case about this. All right, last thing I want to release to you. I just listened to the governor's report, and there's talk about gently opening up. Once again, we have to get the hospitals back to normal. Once we get the hospitals back to normal in Ohio and in New York State and other places, and New York State is making progress too, then we can proceed to open things up a bit. And the idea of going slow means that you can do it in a sustained way. You can open up in a sustained, not open, push back, not 2 steps forward, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but to kind of gently edge our way back into sustained growth, sustainable growth, where we don't have to come back to this. So, you're doing a great job. I just want to remind you of that. I remind people who need help. There is help. There is food that is being, you can get food if you need food. Don't be afraid to ask. I know when I was a kid, we were on food stamps, and I know my mother hated it. She absolutely hated the fact that we went in and paid for our groceries with food stamps, and what people would think about that. But you know what? That's what it's there for. That's what you want to do. You take advantage when you need it. And then if you do take advantage when you need it, then pay it forward too later on. I'm going to stop right there and say have a good weekend, everybody. And I know it's getting a little bit lighter outside, a little snowier here in Ohio, but things are starting to look up, and we will get back to normal. Be good to each other. Be good to yourself, and may you all persist like a lentivirus.